Hello? Good afternoon. It is Thursday afternoon, and the month of June is zipping by. I'm sorry to do this, but I learned my lesson. I got to be able to check always to see if we're still doing what we need to do. Yep, there I am. Okay. Yesterday was Wednesday, and we spent an hour online for the Bible study, and I didn't have the right button pushed. The sound was off, so it was out there for the whole world to see, and then I deleted it. Anyway, how are you today? I'm still having a good day today, although I've spent most of it digging around inside the technology world. Not my favorite thing to do. I was up early this morning, and I like sunny mornings, but I also like mornings where it's cloudy. It was very calm. When it's cloudy, the birds singing are amplified. It's a very quiet day today, even though there's a lot of work to do. So how are you? How's it going for you? Oh, how I wish sometimes that I could just add something to this, right? Then it'll be more complicated. So that I could talk to you, and it would be like a FaceTime or a two-way talk back and forth, but not just with you, but with everybody. I guess that's what Zoom is. Anyway. I was very sad to learn earlier in this week that Doris Borhill, some of you will know Doris Borhill. She was a member here from the time we did a merger, but she was, previous to that, she was a member at the North Haledon, First Presbyterian Church in North Haledon. She and her husband were members there for many, many years. Her husband died a few years ago, and I was very sad to learn that earlier this week she also died. She had fought a valiant fight against cancer. And when she was on repeated rounds of chemo and the cancer was coming back, she fought for her life. She did. She wanted to live for her granddaughter and her daughter. And I was thinking of her so much during this quarantine period for COVID, because when she was on chemo, she was very vulnerable to everything that would come along, and she would completely isolate herself religiously, like a religious practice. Sometimes she would come out to Bible study, but she was always and it was her passion for life. It was her passion for life. And life is so fragile. So it's worth carrying with some care and keeping. I was talking to a man this morning who was describing some of their unique pattern of life in the last couple of months, and he was telling me that just before the quarantine period shut down, his wife was in need of a kidney, and he was a donor. And so he gave a kidney to his wife. And she was, of course, in a very vulnerable, compromised position. They worked very, very hard to protect her life and his after the transplant. It happened just before the virus began to be known. And so we talked about, their time together as a couple, the miracle of him being able to give his kidney to her to save her life. It was a nice moment of bonding, listening to him talk. I'm so lucky as a pastor because I get to be invited in to some wonderful places that life has taken people. And yes, sometimes, if I'm helping a couple that's going through a divorce, or I'm helping someone who's had some terrible death experiences of a child or a parent, there's a landscape that is awful. But I've always felt this way, that in the Hebrew Scriptures, as God is beginning the adventure of life with human beings, and God finally finds two. The first two weren't really willing, but God finally finds two, Sarah and Abram. They walk together. They travel. Abram and Sarah fail over and over again, but God is God. God is able. And the journey goes on until it comes to this guy Moses. And Moses becomes really the main character of the Old Testament. He is the principal character, other than God, of the entire Hebrew Scriptures. The first 5 books of the Bible are called the books of Moses, even though they tell the stories about his ancestors and his story. It's all about him. But one of the dramatic high points of the account of God in relationship to human beings, God crossing the boundary and coming into human life, was when Moses is out in the wilderness and he's tending sheep for his father-in-law, Jethro. And as he's wandering over the hills, he observes a fire. There's a fire in the desert, in the wilderness, not the desert. And there's a bush there. There's a bush that has grown, but somehow the bush has a strange kind of fire in it. The bush is on fire, but it's not your average fire. The bush is not being consumed. And I've always loved that part of it too. And let me back up for a minute and say that I have one wise teacher who said to me once that the pre-qualification for engaging in this journey with God consciously in life is only one pre-qualification, and it comes in the life of Moses, and that is curiosity. That's it. That's all you need to walk with God. Just curiosity, and follow your curiosity. Because as Moses came over the hill, he saw this thing, and it says that his curiosity got the better of him. And he turned aside to see what it was. Turned aside to see what it was. He was curious. Now they say curiosity is what kills a cat, because cats are enormously curious. But curiosity is what launches discipleship. To be curious, to inquire. Let me see what this is like. Yesterday, my theme. How does that work? What's this about? So Moses, he's qualified. He's qualified for this journey with God, this relationship, because he's curious. And he follows his curiosity. And so he approaches the bush. And as he comes, I guess, to kind of within the domain of where the fire and the bush are, he hears a voice. And the voice invites him to take off his shoes. And before he can ask why, the voice he hears tells him that he is on holy ground. So, if you're curious and you're willing to pursue your curiosity with some openness, you've got everything it takes to be a disciple, to be in relationship with God. That's all it takes. And then, as you pursue your curiosity, the sense of awe begins to accompany you in your life. You see things that amaze you. You see things that are holy. And for me, that's not a religious word. That is, it's a description of knowing that whatever that is completely other. That's something I've never seen. That's something I've never experienced. That's something that didn't come because I put it there. It's something that had no origins in me. It has origin in the other, the holy. And so Moses takes off his shoes. I know there's a tradition in the Buddhist tradition for meditation to take off your shoes. I know in the Japanese culture and in many of the Asian cultures, you take off their shoes. You take off your shoes when you enter the house. I think sometimes that would make it much easier to keep the house clean. But the voice says this is holy ground. Holy ground. When we walk with each other, and we walk in love and curiosity, and we explore that, those words coming from the holy to Moses are worth remembering today. You are on holy ground. Holy ground. Be aware, take in something you didn't start, something you didn't maintain, something that has nothing to do with you, something that is completely other than you. You're on holy ground. Listen, let your curiosity go crazy in your relationships with others. Learn everything you can about them. Understand. Take your shoes off. Be vulnerable. And let the other exist. Moses observed that the fire was burning, but it wasn't consuming the bush. There's some things in life that when you're invited into them, the best thing you can do is learn how to tilt your head. That's what my dogs do. They tilt their heads. Not quite sure what that means, but I think that's a little bit like taking your shoes off when you enter into the holiness of the other. What is that about? I hope that today, as you live this day, this is a day, this is created, this whole thing, this whole day, good, bad, indifferent, happy, sorrowful, all of it's a day. Done for this day. Never to be repeated. It's such an opportunity, such an invitation. The relationship